Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Just a quick shout out to the T5 peeps: Bob the Dragon, Cat Crab Lobster, Data Magnet, Dark Machine, Bezic, Try Again 95, Fudic Yol, Astrea the Dreamer, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Athelia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Bucksmorm. Thank you very much. Story number 1. All humans are welcome in hell. Written by Mercury the Diener. She was old. She was older than the gods, older than the stars. She was there to witness the births, deaths, and rebirths of the universe. The gods gave birth to their holy species and guided them to war and peace, to doom and prosperity, all under her watchful gaze. The gods created paradises for their faithful and honorable, so that their people would follow what the gods believed to be the right path. But none dared to make an afterlife to punish the unrighteous, for that was her domain. She was the punishment that all faced in the end. She was the master of the underworld, or hell, or whatever the gods and mortals decided to call it. The unworthy were put on her domain to suffer for eternity. Frozen tundras, near scalding deserts and pits of magma. The starless nights were broken only by the scorching blood-red sun. None would be happy here. Any moments of joy were swiftly taken by her unholy drones. For countless existences, nothing changed. Until, on a planet forgotten by gods and devils alike, a single species was cursed with sentience: humans. They had no gods to guide them, and thus had no heaven to go to. They all came to her. She didn't care, of course. She cared not for the reason why any came to her. She only cared about making all suffer. She watched the humans as they crossed tundras and deserts, forests and plains. And then something interesting happened. They were building things. She looked closer, and indeed the humans were building huts and walls to protect themselves. She was surprised by this. Most species simply let the environment take a hold of them as their feeble minds broke under the stress of being abandoned by their gods. It didn't matter. The humans would suffer. She sent her drones to attack the camp, and soon they had dispersed. Except that now they were building again. She watched as the humans built something else using the wood from cut trees. Her drones came to attack, but as soon as they were seen, the humans all got on top of their creation and they sped away. The master of hell watched in awe as the feeble human construct used the winds to force itself to move against the snow and ice of the nearby tundra. They'd used her elements to beat her. Impressive. She watched the humans closely now. She had ordered her drones to stop chasing them since they simply could not outmaneuver the humans. She was interested in seeing their progress now. The humans seemed to notice that they were no longer being followed, and thus rebuilt their camps, this time much larger ones. They made tools and weapons, hunted and ate creatures that most species would have called monsters, collected plants and fruit that were poisonous to all but the most resilient. They thrived. The master, for the first time in untold years, smiled. She saw as new humans came to her reign and introduced their fellows to the wonders of farming and fire. She saw as they were introduced to basic metalworking. She watched as they used metal weapons to disable her drones. She saw in awe as humanity's dead built empires on the single worst plane of existence. The Reman Empire, the Greater Brazilian Technocracy, the 8th German Reich, the United States of Russia, and countless others. She saw as Tesla and Edison brought their bickering to the afterlife. She saw as Newton and Einstein theorized together to understand the laws of her plane. She saw as Stirling and Da Vinci worked to build a giant Stirling engine in the divide between the magma ocean and the great tundra. But what impressed her the most were the wars. She had never seen such carnage in all of her infinite existence. Men and women, armed with weapons so powerful they could only exist in this plane, all marched and fought for their nations. Humans would die in the trenches of World War I and II, only to find themselves fighting yet again for the afterlife. Humans brought more suffering to themselves than she ever would. She grew to love these, her people more each day. They were brutal, ruthless, and primitive, but also gentle, compassionate, and intelligent. Many gods challenged humanity. Wars of conquest and extermination were declared against them. None succeeded, of course. Her people were too strong even for the gods. Many died to defend their homes and family, however. She shed no tears for the dead. She only offered them her gentle hand and greeted them to their new home. For all humans were welcome in hell. End of story. Story number 2. Recommissioned, written by Algae Father Anthracite. When we found it, there was an immediate press blackout. The military came in and took over command. The object was towed to a secret military base and studied for years. I joined the program after nearly 50 annas. I was still green, right out of training when I joined. But my family had a long history of military service, and I had been deemed not a security risk. I'd been stationed there for most of my career. I had worked my way through the ranks, and was now a ranking officer. A few more annums and I could retire. In the time I had been here, I had served in most of the departments. There were a few people like me who knew what was going on, but weren't actually involved in the research. Administrative position, security personnel, and a few others. There was a buzz in the air on the base that day. A promising project was about to be completed, and if it paid off, the ramifications were world-changing. After all these years, we knew what it was we had found. A ship, a spaceship, but not one of our planet. The corridors were too short, too narrow. The controls were marked in an unknown language. We'd spent decades deciphering the language, and even more time reverse engineering the ship and all of its systems. Mapping every wire, every chip, every fuse. We learned a lot from that alone. It took dedicated teams' whole careers to decipher what each component did. Even longer to decode the software that ran the ship. And now, here we were, on the verge of actually reactivating the device of alien origin. As the Chief Military Liaison Officer, I was standing off to one side. I was standing next to the lab's Managing Director and a couple of the other admin types. In the test chamber, a group of techs was scurrying around, hooking up various support devices, diagnostic tools, data recorders, and more. Today, for the first time, we would be powering up the communications device from the craft. We finally had enough knowledge to decipher how it worked, and hopefully how to interpret any messages that came across. There was a buzz in the room, which slowly died down as the final connections were made, and the final checks were completed. "Wish me luck," said the lead scientist of the project. I said a silent prayer. The last switch was thrown, and the screen on the device glowed a pale blue. What we assumed were letters were scrolling across the screen. The camera recorded everything. A tech who was fluent in the alien language states that it was some sort of boot sequence. After several minutes, the boot cleared, and all that remained was a blinking cursor. Everyone sat with bated breath. The device appeared to be functioning. "Proceed with the test message," the project lead said. The tech at the keyboard laboriously typed out a message. "Is anyone there?" in glowing blue letters. The tech inhaled deeply, holding it in. He hit the return key. Sensors and data recorders started to scream as massive amounts of data nearly overwhelmed them. The message moved from the bottom to the top of the screen. The cursor sat, blinking endlessly for what felt like hours. After several millicycles, letters began to crawl across the screen. "Unknown signal, please advise call sign." "I think they want us to identify the ship, sir," said the tech. "What should I tell them?" Makes sense. We retire comms data every few annums. The one from the ship is probably long expired, I said, being familiar with the communication protocols we used. Should we tell them that we found their ship and ask where to find the call sign? Do it! We don't want to keep them waiting, I said. As the chief military liaison, it was my call. Relaying message, sir. The tech began to type. After several messages back and forth, we were stalling for time, trying to find the call signs that they were looking for. Someone had pulled up a database of images. On one of the hull plates was a string of numbers and letters that we had never been able to decode. We decided to try it. If we were right, we could progress the dialogue. If we were wrong, we bought more time. XP05A. Please hold the line. After a few minutes, the terminal started to tick letters across the screen. Please identify who this is. That ship has been missing for nearly 300 years. What colony are you on? Sir, what do we tell them? All eyes turned to me. Tell them the truth. It's not likely that they can do anything but cut us off. It's either that or open communications between us, I said. I'd been briefed by command how to proceed, and it was decided that lying was no way to open communication with a more technologically advanced civilization. We found your ship floating through our system when it passed between a stellar camera and our sun. That was 80 solar rotations ago. We have no colony worlds. Greetings from Durine. The terminal blinked blue for another eternity. Finally, it started moving again. Greetings from Earth. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.